Good morning. We are ready to begin our second art tour and the final one of the season. And our first presenter today is Kathy Cessna.
Thank you. Well, I think I know most of you, but just in case some of you don't know who I am, I'm an old member of Bethlehem, literally. I'm born and baptized here. My parents were members, my grandparents were members, and I think even my great-grandparent father was a member. So we go way back. Scott, my husband, Scott Cessna, who has been a member here since '79, and we were married here. We were the first people married in the new church. So yeah, that's just, and that's not about art, but it is. It was about the new church. In fact, we couldn't have our reception here because this part wasn't quite completed. So we made it anyway. But so anyway, we've all been baptized here, and our children and our grandchildren as well. So that's now enough about me. But I just wanted to tell you how old I really am. Today we learned about music being such an important part of worship, thanks to our pastor today. And now we're going to learn about how art actually is just as important in worship in many ways. And we'll see it through Paul Ullman's art that we have featured here in the fellowship hall and as we go out in the narthex. Want to introduce, before we talk about the art, because the art, I did contact Paul Ullman, and he was so nice to give us artist statements on each of the pieces so I can actually tell you in his own words what they are and not have to interpret it myself. But most importantly, the person that made the art, Paul Ullman, was actually an intern here from 2001 to 2, I think, and we all loved him. He quickly, and his wife Jana, and at that time little Tommy was maybe 1 or 2, they quickly became part of our congregation and very close friends with many of us. And he was a wonderful pastor and artist and great with the young people, just marvelous. But anyway, just a brief update on him. Tommy's now 24 and married, and since then he's had 2 other children, Kelsey 21 and Emily 20, and they reside in Wisconsin, where he was born in Wisconsin as well. Just a quick background on him. He is a pastor and shares his artistic work, as you can see, with his Drawn to the Word ministry. He is with audiences all over the country and the world, and he is a performing artist, which amazes me. I like to paint myself, and I would never want anybody watching me. but he does it in such a fashion that you can see it come to alive. How many have seen him at work? Yeah. It's just fabulous. And the way he follows the painting and turns it upside down and has this vision, and you always see the glory of God coming through with the light. It's just truly amazing how he can minister through his artwork. Like I say, he was born in Wisconsin, and he sent me a little bio, so I want to share it with you. He was born on a farm, and he started doing painting with his the landscapes and the scenery of Wisconsin during his childhood years. At age 10, he started getting professional direction and instruction in acrylic, oil, and watercolor. And during that same year, when he was 10, Paul was the Wisconsin elementary youth selected to present an original watercolor to their then governor of Wisconsin. So that was a big deal for him, and as it should be. He later studied drawing in college and also science education and divinity at the seminary. He's also received national and international recognition for his work. So. Just wanted to mention a little bit about him since, like I say, it's truly amazing what he does. And so, but now, in his own words, these are Paul's artist statements. We're going to start with the piece on the right. It's Moses and the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. It was taken from Exodus 14. Moses stands before the Red Sea, lifting his staff towards the heavens. God miraculously parts the waters for the Israelites to cross. The Egyptian army in pursuit will become mired in the mud, and the waters will cover them over, allowing the Israelites to cross into freedom into the wilderness on the other side. So we all know that Bible verse, but to see it come to life is truly, an act of worship in ministry. Okay, the second one, the piece on the left, is the parable of the unmerciful servant, taken from Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 to 25. Jesus, upon being questioned about how many times we are to forgive others, replied with this parable. In summary, a master was settling debts with his servants. One servant was unable to pay, so he begged the master to have mercy on him. The master forgave him the debts. But then this same servant went out to another servant who owed him a much smaller debt and demanded that he pay. The servant was not able to pay, so he had him thrown into prison until he could. Then the master found out about this. He called a servant to come in to remind him of how much he had been forgiven and to express how disappointed he was that he had not also shown the same mercy on those who owed him a debt. So in anger, the master had his servant thrown into prison for not showing mercy to others. Okay, and then one other piece is actually out in the narthex, and so we'll move that direction, I guess. And I'm going to let the mic go, so I'll have to talk loud out here. Okay, I hope everybody can get close enough to hear. And this piece is called "The Shepherds in the Fields Near Bethlehem." It's taken from Luke chapter 2, verses 8 through 20. Here the shepherds are visited by an angel of the Lord. The glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were afraid. But the angel told them of the good news of the birth of Jesus, which had taken place in Bethlehem. Unto you was the message then, and is the message still today. The shepherds then went to see this thing that had taken place. So very appropriate that it's right here in Bethlehem Lutheran Church. I love, and I don't want to get into art interpretation too much, but when you look at his work, I mean, there's an abstract quality about it that I just love, and it gets the message across very, very clearly, and always has the grace of God coming through. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. The next contribution of art that I wanted to talk about is actually more graphic art and drawing. As you can see, the Spirit-born was a theme that became Bethlehem's centennial celebration logo. And the Spirit-born theme was suggested by our current member who lives in Cedar Rapids, Robert Osick. Maybe some of you know him, but he gave this idea, and then a man whom I don't know, Clint Hansen, was a graphic artist. Does anybody remember Clint Hansen? Anyway, he was a former member, and they made this design to celebrate our 100th anniversary. The italic E underscores the idea that Bethlehem has been carried along by the Spirit these 100 years. And then Clint used the idea that the Bible word for spirit is also the word for wind. And also the Danish ship, as you can see that we have here in the sanctuary, is a symbol of our spirit being born by the Spirit's power. Our spirit coming home by the Spirit's power. Okay, so and then in addition to those, the next slides are different slides that have, and we'll go through them just briefly, one at a time. But this is our member, Dick Markison, a current member. I wish he were here today, but he's an art teacher and a swimming coach and an educator. And his family has been a member for many, many years, over 100 years in our congregation as well. His son Kai lives in Arizona. Kai was a wealth of knowledge in getting me memorabilia, and remembers when we built the new church, he was 9 years old, and his grandparents went here, and Kai just loves art, loves drawing too, and so he was very instrumental in getting me some of his dad's drawings. Okay, so their family is also of Danish heritage, and his grandparents, Alfred and Bodell Markison, Dick's parents, came to Bethlehem in the 1920s. Dick and Janine lived here. You remember them, you know them well. And Dick was got his BA from UNI and a master's degree as well. He taught art at Santa Barbara, California, and later Cedar Falls High School. Also founded the swimming program at Cedar Falls High School and coached for 47 years, being the most winning coach. He received the National Swimming Coach of the Year in 2005. I just want to say all that because we just how very accomplished he is, and right here in our own congregation, and his wonderful drawings. This was a piece that he drew to promote building a new church. Okay, as you can see, it's not our church, but it's the idea, the concept that we needed to build a new church back at whenever that was. I'm not sure. But then we can go on to the next one, the next slide, growing towards a greater tomorrow. This is, you can see then we have the configuration of our church conceptually and the cross, the foundation. But the next one is the Festival of Dedication for the new church in 1979. And so that is when we celebrated the dedication to God of the new building. And he designed those covers, and they're magnificent drawings. They're just beautiful. And so we want to make sure that he gets all the credit for that. And then going forward, we'll go, these are some different Easter programs or bulletins that Dick designed throughout the years. I don't have them in chronological order, it's not my fault, but this was 1984, and you can see the Christ has risen. The next one was actually in 78. I should have put those in order, obviously. That was before the new church was built, so that would have been at the old church on Main Street. But again, a beautiful, detailed drawing. Okay, the next one is in 83. And these all were Easter ones. I'm sure he did others, but these were Easter ones that Kai sent. Okay, and then the next one is 1982. And those are the only ones he sent. I think is there one more slide of yes. Don't know who did these. I thought Dick did, but Kai said no, he didn't. So if anybody knows, that'd be great to document that. But you all remember them, I'm sure. And we have a plate of the old church and a commemoration plate of the new church, which are really kind of neat. And on the back, they have the pastors listed with the years. So anyway, that concludes the end of my little part, and I think Jeff is ready to take over. Thank you for listening.
Unlike Kathy, I'm going to talk about something that I, plus a few others in the church, did for the church, which is the lights. 14 years ago, Ellen and I came to Bethlehem, and the first thing I noticed was the church was dark. There was no uplight at all. It was an old-style fixture. And so, of course, being the engineer that I am, I went to Congregational Home at the time and said, have you guys looked at new lights? And they said, oh yes, we have a quote from a guy and it's going to be somewhere between $100,000 and $120,000. I'm like going, really? And they said, well, do you want to help with that? And I said, yes, I will go ahead and help with that. It just felt right. And I'm probably going to say that 3 times, and 3 will actually come into play here multiple times, because I'm going to speak about how I kind of got into this, the kind of technical stuff, and then maybe the inspirational at the end. So that's how I got into this. I went and I started looking at church fixtures, different companies that have them, took them back to Congregational Home. We could have had a big bowl fixture. We could have had chandeliers. We could have had big round fixtures. None of them really felt like what should be here. So I started doing sketches myself because for the size of fixture that we're getting, they're all fairly expensive. So making your own fixture can work out. And I got to the design we currently have. And then I spent time with Congregational Home, and we came in here and I had a sample light and put it up on a big pole, and they're like going, oh, is this big enough? No, let's look at the other one. And we also looked at how high, and we're kind of getting into the technical aspect now, but how high, how close to the ceiling? Should we have them lower? Should we have them higher? What's the right thing to do? We also looked at the fact that this light, each of the lights has three aspects. There's an uplight showing our beautiful woodwork up there. There's the body of the light fixture, and then there's the downlight. Our old fixtures pretty much only had downlight. It was very limiting. So then I took my sketch to Jefferson Lighting, and here's the initial response from them. I took my sketch to them, and of course, being the engineer I am, I also stamped it saying, hey, if I'm going to look at this as my work, I'm going to stamp it with a possible copyright. And they looked at it and they said, we kind of like this light fixture. Because Jefferson Lighting has a huge catalog of church fixtures. In fact, they're one of the main companies in the United States that sells lights to churches. And so they said, there's other expenses beside the fixture itself. You have to get a UL rating, you have to test the light for the light output, you have to test the light for sound, you have to, there's a lot of stuff that goes into making a light fixture custom. And they gave me a price on that, and I said, ooh, that kind of hurts. And they said, well, you have your stamp on your original drawing. Can we do a trade? And I said, well, what are you talking about? And they said, well, you give up the rights on the light fixture, as in you don't patent it. You give it to us, and we will carry all those costs, and then we can put your light fixture into our light catalog. I said, that works. I can do that. And so today, I don't know whether at the bottom there is a light number from the Jefferson. Now on here it says Lightsmith. That's actually the custom fixture arm of Jefferson Lighting. If you take that catalog number and you go to Jefferson Lighting and you say, I want this light fixture, you'll get our fixture. At the time that we installed these, they were unique to us. 13 years ago when they went in, I'm not sure how many of these have been sold to other churches in the meantime, but like I said, at the time that they were created, unique to us. So now we get into the last part, and I don't know whether I didn't do this intentionally, it just kind of felt right. But you'll notice there are 3 lights under one halo, 3 in 1. Within each fixture, there are 3 lights, one up, one down, one's the body. Kind of stepping to the side, but an Easter theme. If you look at a picture of Easter with Christ on the cross, there's 3 crosses. Each of these lights has 3 crosses. Again, but it just felt right. And I guess the last thing I can say is that it was designed that while you're in the church, from anywhere you're at, you should be able to see multiple crosses on multiple fixtures. But that's my presentation. Technical aspects, these are all LED. So they have dimmed somewhat. We have 100,000 hours on the LEDs themselves. So we're 13 years into using them, but we're probably 10 years out from actually having to replace some. There are some where you look at a downlight like over here, it's gone out. We have some replacements for that. We just haven't done it because we've only got a couple and we've got replacements downstairs. For the fixture itself, for inside and replacing those, 10 years down the road, you replace the guts, the fixtures stay.
All right. Hello. I'm Andrea Kettle. Last time I spoke about the basic construction of our stained glass windows and about specifically the north and the south windows. And today I'm going to tell you a bit about our west and our sky windows. And before I begin, I want to acknowledge Kirsten Moore, who found a helpful resource for me to use, and oddly enough, ironically enough, it was what Kathy had mentioned. It's a compilation of information that was shared at Bethlehem's Festival of Dedication at this location on November 4th, 1979. Okay, so I mentioned last time that our windows are very contemporary and abstract, therefore very symbolic. First, our west windows behind the altar are called atonement windows. These windows represent Jesus' suffering, death, and resurrection, showing how he made it possible for us to be at one with God the Father. The design uses vertical and horizontal lines. You can see that specifically, I think, a lot on the right two windows, which look like shafts of new life. These lines are symbolic of grain, growing and maturing, representing new life and growth. And the meaning of grain itself is especially significant. Jesus used the image of a grain of wheat to explain his purpose. In John chapter 12, verse 24, it says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." This means that just as a seed must be buried and die to grow and produce more grain, Jesus had to die so that we could have new life. And then also the windows and the grain imagery remind us that Jesus is the bread of life. His presence nourishes us and gives us eternal life, just as bread gives us strength to live. I was looking at them today during service, and I was looking at the far left one thinking, in this resource, they didn't mention anything about what I thought was the left window looked a little different than the other two. So this is not in the research, but I was just thinking maybe it's like an eye, kind of looks like. And if it is, which I'm not sure, but if anyone knows or knows the artist, maybe it is, however, representing like a new vision and clearer understanding of oneself and one's relationship with God. Okay, and then the sky windows, if you can see. I also have pictures on the board, or on the TVs, but those are called the kingdom windows, and they let sunlight shine down from above. And I mentioned last time how even on a cloudy day, our windows are made to allow a lot of light in. This natural light reminds us of how God's presence can guide and change our lives. These windows reflect the promise in John chapter 3, verse 16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life." And like all three of our other windows, our kingdom windows contain a lot of symbolism. So the three windows together represent the dawning of the kingdom of heaven, a new beginning for all believers. And if you can look in the window, at the top there's like a band that kind of arches over all three, and that is said to symbolize the start of a new day. And it is part of a circle, which has no end, reminding us of the eternal life that we have through Jesus Christ. And then if you see the middle window, there's a rising section of light that stands for the soul's journey into the glory of heaven. And along with the never-ending band of light and then the rising light in the middle, the window's colors are also symbolic. You can see that there's like light colors of orange and yellow, and then some darker blues and greens. The yellow-orange light overstretching the windows shows how light breaks through darkness. And these windows are a message of hope. Even in hard times, God's light can guide us and bring us a new beginning. So, that's all.
Two more presentations to go, but before we get up and reassemble in the narthex, I wanted to acknowledge some people who made this happen. This was truly a team effort. Chronologically, it began way back with Frida Lovejoy, who was a longtime member here at Bethlehem and served as our church secretary for many, many years. In addition to that, Frida was a historian. She wrote down and organized many of these things. They weren't always easy to find, which it was needed the next team of people who are archivists who were able to help some of the presenters find and pull information together. Those include Kathy and Diane and Kirsten and Elaine all helped dig this information out for the presenters, who were, as you may remember, Marty, Anne Marie, Andrea, Elaine, and Kathy, Jeff, Andrea again, Act 2, and will be followed by Arlene and Kyle. And we also had good support from Ellen and Kelly, our office manager, and our video crew of Reg, helped by his assistant Elaine today. And special shout out to Noah, because Noah has run this. And last night was prom, and Noah was originally scheduled to have today off. But he came in to do this. Thank you all. We'll reassemble out by the Jesus statue in the narthex, and then after that, we'll go out to the bell, and then we'll dismiss from there. Thank you.
My name's Arlene, and I am talking about Christus, Jesus. The Christus statue actually dates back to 1833. It was sculpted standing 6 meters tall of a Carrara marble by Bertel, excuse my pronunciation, Thorvaldsen, and he made the Jesus resurrected. It's right now located in the Church of Our Lady, an evangelical Lutheran church in Copenhagen, Denmark. The original statue of the Christus and the apostles were made of plaster and then currently inside the Thorvaldsen Museum in Copenhagen. The inspiration for Bertel Thorvaldsen's Christus is unknown and could have come from his study of classical Greek sculptures, especially the work of Raphael. Thorvaldsen rarely kept drawings or models, so we really don't know the precise evolution of this statue. Our copy of the statue is at least 75 years old here at Bethlehem, dating back to standing over the altar at the old Bethlehem Church on 1402 Main Street. When the new Bethlehem Church here at 4000 Hudson Road opened in 1979, it was placed in the narthex here, just inside the entrance as you see it today. The support base for the statue was designed by Robert Lovejoy and built by Elmer Larson. In the move, the wrist was slightly cracked, and if you look really close, it's the left wrist. Anyway, it was temporarily actually put in storage closet. A member of the congregation, no name was noted, who dealt with ceramics, repaired the cracked wrist. And as a matter of fact, he had actually fixed it and laid it on its back and told somebody, like, you know, the wrist is fixed and don't touch it until it really dries. So, the statue is welcoming, you know, like from my research, it basically is a forgiving, guiding, loving embrace of the Master. Peace on earth, come unto me, my peace I give to you, is what I read through my reviews. Our words for the statue were, come unto me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And that's Matthew 11:28. Since the new nave has a freestanding altar, it was decided to place the Christ statue here in the narthex instead. Prior to our first worship service, which was on March 4th, 1979, the Christ statue had not been quite repaired yet, so it was not visible in the church. And you'll like this. 2 elderly Danish members, both hearing impaired, arrived for the service. Of course, they sat back in the back of the church, as most Lutherans do, and they stated to one another loudly, "Where's Jesus? Where is Jesus?" And a quiet chuckle was heard from the congregation, realizing they missed the Christ statue on the new altar. So I don't know if anybody ever wants to change it back. I don't know how that would do that, but right now, he's here with us, and lovely spot. So, thank you.
And I'll be on the history of the bell, specifically here for Bethlehem. First, so history of a bell. A bell is used as a call of worship and is rung. It can be dates back to like with births, deaths, and marriages, but is most significant of a Christian life. Rung during Christian holidays, and then of course, as we know it, as a call for prayer, purification, and protection. Often rung at the beginning and end of services. It is symbolic of God's voice. The first history of the bell for Bethlehem dates back to 1904, as it was a donation from N. Jorgensen and his wife Wilhelmina. With the transcription of the bell, gift to Bethlehem's Danish Evangelical Lutheran Church of Cedar Falls, Iowa. Hallowed Christian bell, of all the precious metals, you are the dearest to my heart. You awaken in me a solemn hymn, resounding daily in my heart. Now bells are ringing far and wide, their pearls in the sky ascending great gladness, like a swelling tide, each Sunday with them blending. The bell was moved from the main street to our current Hudson Road location on February 25th, 1979 by Athenic Brothers, or now known as Benton's Concrete. The bell was dedicated here on May 20th, 1979. A note from Kristen Moore as we were doing our research: if a church member sat in the balcony of the old church, you would see the ushers open a slender door and to tug and pull on the rope that was attached to the bell. Above the balcony roof, most often, it would have been Godfrey, thank you, head usher who rang the bell, but Kristen's dad also got to ring the bell. As you can imagine, it would take a good pull to get the bell to move back and forth. Now, of course, with modern technology, it rings by itself with the push of a button next to the organ. Thank you.